Get off the desk. Get off the desk. Sit, please. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, John Carlo.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Julie.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Morning.
Excellent. Different programs, different buttons that you can hear people. So thank you for letting me know.
Good morning.
Morning, John Collar. How are you?
Carl's rocking that headset. I feel like we should be putting in requests for the DJ to spin a couple.
Sorry, don't do requests. Julie, it is 9:01. We have a quorum and a large agenda.
All right. Well, then let's begin. I'd like to welcome everyone to the September 22nd Landmarks Commission meeting. It's great to see everyone, even if it continues to be virtually. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio Open Meeting Law and Section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rule of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we'd ask for everyone to first have their microphones on mute. We then ask that you use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located at the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website or email have been considered. We have also received emails from those who provide written comment on a particular matter. We'd like to call the September 22nd, 2022 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Brunges, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson,
Here.
Mr. Benetti, Mr. Brancatelli,
Present.
Mr. Colicchio,
Here.
Mr. Dryer, Mr. Edmond,
Here.
Director Wong, Mr. Strickland,
Here.
Mr. Trosik, or Ms. Trot.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum. We are also joined by Kevin Roberts from the Law Department, and I will be your master of ceremonies and mover of the slides.
Excellent. All right, well, then we will begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'll begin with our first applicant located at 7424 Detroit Avenue, Blazing Cycles Mural. We'd like to welcome the applicant to unmute your mic. Please announce yourself and tell us about your project.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Bob Peck. I'm a local artist, and this is for a mural on the sidewall of the Blazing Saddles Bicycle Shop garage. And so this location, besides being an artist, I'm an avid bicyclist, so I frequent this building regularly and pass by it very often as well. I noticed they had a garage space that had a blank kind of gray wall on the side there that you can see located in this image. The wall itself faces a vacant field currently where the original Waterston Lake School used to stand. And right now it's open to the side street as well as Detroit Avenue. So being an artist, I thought it would look good with a little bit of color on it and a nice mural. So if you go to the next slide, please. This is a detail shot of the wall. It's 24 feet wide, 9 feet tall. As I mentioned, it's just sort of a blank gray wall right now. It does have a fence in front of it with about 3 to 4 feet of clearance between the fence and the wall. So there is space to get in there and create a mural. Next slide. And this is the proposed design. This is one of my abstract murals. You may have seen some of my other work. I have a mural in a similar style, different color palette on 27th in Detroit at Linda's Superette, as well as one on the north-facing wall of West 78th Street Studios in the area. So it is abstract. It's just basically a colorful design piece. Next slide. The previous slide before this just shows the fence in front of it. Again, as I mentioned, it is a chain link fence, so I try to Photoshop in where the bars would be placed. I don't think it will obstruct the mural in any significant way in terms of opacity or clarity of the mural as well. And then the last slide there, if you can next slide, please. These are just some samples of some of my other work in the area, east and west side of Cleveland. Again, the two on the right-hand side are the ones I mentioned at Linda's Superette and 78th Street. The other two being in the east side of Cleveland, all very similar styles. So that is pretty much my presentation. I'm open to any questions you might have.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. We will begin with feedback from Ms. Petrus.
Good morning, Commission. I wanted to let you guys know that we did receive a letter of permission from the owner and president of Blazing Saddle, Mr. Travis Peebles. He wrote that he was writing on behalf of Blazing Saddle Cycle and Blazing Saddle Properties and approval of any and all artwork being submitted by Mr. Bob Peck. We are thrilled to bring his vibrant work to the Gordon Square Arts District. Thank you for your consideration. I think that this mural is appropriate for the location and really brightens up that space, and I'm in support.
Excellent. Then we'll move on to feedback from the local design review committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was reviewed by the Gordon Square Design Review Committee last Wednesday. It was approved unanimously with the condition that the mural cover the entire wall. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll then open up the floor to questions and comments from the commission. Mr. Edmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm familiar with some of the other murals, and I love that this is an artist-initiated thing that they, the property owner then went along with. I love the energy of this, just like some of the others. I have a couple of questions, sort of for context. In this field area to the side, is there any sort of formal or informal activities going on there? Are kids playing sort of pickup soccer or football games? Is there any kind of life in that space?
I guess from my perspective, I pass by there 2 to 3 times a week, and I've always seen it just as an empty vacant field, unfortunately. It is a great space, but I don't see a lot of activity in that area.
Hopefully this will make that space feel like a little bit more like a space that's cared for, or that, that people are aware of. And my other question is, what's your medium? Are you physically painting it on the wall? Is it a vinyl application?
Yeah,
What's
it'll
the-
be
if it is,
physically
what's the
painted,
prep?
primarily spray paint, and then latex paint is the base color would be laid down, that darkest green color with exterior latex, and all the rest is spray paint.
And what's your prep for, so, because it looks like there's some paint on the wall. I don't know what kind of condition that's in.
Yeah, it's when you get close enough, it has a light, almost stucco texture to it. So it's all concrete. So I will go through and peel off anything that might be loose, which I didn't really see much of. And if there's anything that needs sanded, I'll absolutely sand that because the goal is longevity for the mural. So anything that might be structurally unsound will definitely be cleaned up before painting.
I think this would be a really great addition to that space, and I like how you'll see it. I guess westbound on Detroit as well as you're driving too. So I'm in support of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to express that I'm also very much in support of this mural, and comment that oftentimes we like the mural perimeter to be withheld to expose some of the structure as a frame around the mural. But in this case, I agree with the comments from the Design Review Committee that it's most appropriate to cover the entire expanse of the wall. I think it looks great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland. I'm also in support of the mural. I think this is a very interesting location. I only, question, is there redevelopment? If redevelopment happens on the adjacent property, what is the maintenance approach for this mural? You said there is 3 feet of clearance to allow maintenance of the mural moving forward?
Yes, so I don't know where the property line officially begins for the lot itself after the fence. However, if the fence does belong to the Blazing Saddles property and that fence line, then there should always be space to get in to that area and maintain the mural as needed. So I am aware that eventually that site could have large construction there. I just figured for the time being, whether it's a few months or hopefully even a few years, it'd be nice to brighten up that space with some art.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Well, I'm in support of the mural and, its application for the full wall. Further questions or comments from the commission, or someone like to put forward a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would, I echo the sentiments. It's a great mural design. The field does get used for those of us who go to Local West and then come hang across the field to eat, but I think it's a great project, and I would move to approve.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion to approve as presented. Do we have a second, Mr. Tarasik?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Excellent, thank you. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? No. Mr. Brunges, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Brancatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Clicchia, Mr. Clicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosik,
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
All right, excellent. We look forward to seeing the mural take shape.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
You too. We'll move on to our next applicant, the Rose Building located at 4500 Lorraine Avenue, facade reconstruction.
Hello, everyone. Morning, everybody. It's Jim McKedo, the owner of the property. We closed on the property yesterday. I also own Forest City Shuffleboard next door, and we're currently constructing the townhomes on the corner at 47th and Lorraine, which I was through this process for both of those, obviously. So anyways, I purchased the building. I lose sleep nightly that the thing's just going to fall in. So it is our intention to rehab the building and kind of preserve it in its current state. I have Paul from Mid-State Restoration on here who can speak to kind of the process there, as well as David Monet, the architect, in terms of, you know, how we want to kind of make a few alterations to the front to try to get it back to its probably what it used to look like. So anyways, with that, I will kick it over to David to walk you through. We also went to design review last week and implemented the changes that they requested as well, but I'll let David take it from here.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, as Jim has stated, yeah, we're looking to kind of take this building back a little bit farther in its past, even beyond what we see in the historic photo. Based on kind of looking at some of the details that exist on the building and just taking some notes to some of this other common streetcar era construction that we know well around Cleveland, Lakewood, where I am based out of as well. So as you said, it's on the corner. The upper portion of the facade is bowing pretty significantly, which is why there's so much fence and scaffolding around the front that we've been concerned about. So our kind of direction, as it seems from the bowing, is that whole face on Lorraine Avenue is we're gonna just take it down. Obviously support the inside structurally as we're doing this process, but take it down completely to the lintels. But it seems like the storefront and everything there is in pretty good condition. There's all the bowing is kind of centered on that center second story window. So we believe that everything else looks pretty good down below, other than the painted brick facade, which has this kind of an odd stacked bond detail in what would be the sign band or a transom area, an exposed steel lintel, which just feels out of place with what we think is appropriate for the building. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, a couple other views of the building. One a little bit farther back. Thank you, Google Street View, on that, where it was a white version instead of the orangey reddish version of the storefront. That we're looking to, as I said, looking to take back a little bit farther to what would be a little more traditional. So implementing full glazing, transom type windows above, and then restoring a brick detail base with some sandstone, matching the sandstone detail that is there existing. So what we see in the photo is how we want to restore the upper half, almost exactly. Other than the windows, we have these white vinyl sliders, which also is kind of felt out of place. Normally we see a traditional kind of a double hung look, so we want to bring that back in pairs as it felt appropriate for the proportions. And then taking some note from our discussion last week with the Ohio City Board. Across the street is the Arsenal Cider House. There's some nice detail there that was also pretty similar to our building. Some of the heights were a little bit different, but in the discussion as a way to get some resolution and how the brick detailing could work. On their side, they have a little bit of a higher sandstone base that matched that sill line. They kind of framed out and created a nice little bit of a detail that we wanted to recreate. We felt would be appropriate based on what we're seeing above, where we have a couple of coursing details that block in Also be able to then provide, with having a brick base as well, a little more durable, as this is, you know, a busy area and snow brushing up against it rather than a wood material or something like that to get a little more damage. So we wanted to make sure what we were doing would be felt historically appropriate and also have some longevity to the building. If we go to the next slide, as we turn the corner, that facade is in pretty good shape. Obviously, we'll have to determine the best course of action in terms of feathering in, because it's not a perfect right angle on that corner there, and it's kind of toothed in as we come down the corner. We feel like we should be able to get a pretty good match as that feathers in without having to take down much. Our construction team is gonna, obviously, we'll want to go a little bit on the fly on that, to just as things go down, we discover things in these old buildings as during the restoration, so we'll just do that as carefully as we can. But for the storefront portion, you know, gonna be taking that, at least the face brick portion off, matching that storefront around the corner. The only other changes on this facade would be, you know, the windows going down the side, restoring to the double hung style with a nice clad window, not white vinyl. And then there's some glass block that was also punched out as well. We're going to infill that just with our brick that we're doing. The other portion, as we see on this side, is there's the door to the second floor apartments. The wood door, well, I think my drawing's a little nicer than what's actually there. You might be able to see a little better in the photo where they've boarded up some of the side transoms, detailing to put mailboxes. The door is in not great shape. And we also wanted to enlarge it to a 3-foot width to make it a little bit more towards an accessible entrance, even though, you know, not a wheelchair ramp, but it's also still get that clearance a little bit better for someone going up to the second floor apartments. So just matching our storefront system to the side door, get a little more light, a little more friendliness in there, but also maintaining all the nice stone and brick detailing that's at that entrance otherwise as we get around the front. So that is pretty much the extent of the changes. Got some cut sheets on looking to do Anderson windows. We have our partners over at Thomas Brick doing their best with brick matching. The brick itself does need cleaning. Once again, with photos not doing it justice, you can see there's just a lot of soot on the building. There was some graffiti that was sprayed off of that we need to get into, but from what we can determine at this point, we have a pretty good brick match. After we clean it, we might reevaluate it just as we get that cleaning process done. But we have no problems that we'll be able to, you know, find a match. We've done a couple of these projects around the area, and I'm actually on a review board myself, so I've seen enough brick matches that you know, we have very good confidence that whatever we do find, this raked kind of multi-tone red and darker brick is so far over clean. There's a lot of it and a lot of restoration going, so we can find a good match here. Also, I've called out, going to go with like a dark bronze glazing system on here, pretty standard. Seems it fits appropriately with the brick color that we have on there. And then that same color is what we use for the double hung, so we get rid of the hard contrast that exists with the white. Once again, traditionally we would think that these would be painted this darker color as well in the community. And then lastly, we tried to do a nice little color rendering of what we have going on and what we hope to accomplish here with the building. I think the one piece we'll probably try and save as best we can is if we can keep that rose sandstone cap and be able to put that one back from the historic facade, that would be nice. But either way, that's something we can kind of match in as well. So if there's any questions on the design, otherwise let Paul, if Paul has can speak to the reconstruction phase, if there's any questions on that. But
Okay, well, thank you for the presentation. Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with feedback from the local design review committee. Carl?
Madam Chair, I do not see our representative, and they did not send over notes. I know that this was approved, and they were thankful for the job that was being done, and it looks like that they did make the changes that were requested. The windows were different when I remember it, and they did make the changes. So this does reflect what the design review committee had recommended. I just don't have those notes in front of me right now.
Okay.
If I may comment, I know the ones as Carl said, you know, we did have a full height and weren't looking at the transom. We had seen some other projects like that, so we implemented the transom. We actually liked that better. It was also taking that sandstone cap a little bit taller to the sill plate to help cap that. We'd seen a lower sandstone base detail, as you can kind of see in this image to the right of the door, but and the right of the corner there, but taking a little bit higher kind of helped that resolve. Which is the two biggest things that, as you see, implemented on the drawing here.
All right, excellent. Thank you for that overview. Appreciate that. We'll open up the floor for the commission for questions and comments.
Madam Chair, may I want to give a little bit of background on this for those who have not been here through this whole saga of this
Yes.
building. This wall has been bowing on the front since about as early as December of 2017. And the previous owners had been stating this was in a state of imminent collapse since 2019. This was reviewed by the Landmarks Commission in October of 2020 when it was tabled for more information. And it came back on November 12, 2020, where the Landmarks Commission denied the certificate of appropriateness for demolition. In February of 2021, the Board of Zoning Appeals overturned the Landmarks Commission's decision and making the demolition provable. However, the applicants did not obtain the proper permits after the BZA decision was, and that rendering was discarded as per the BZA's rules. So they would have had to get a new permit and go through the process again. A new permit was applied for in July. So the previous permit was discarded in April of 2022. Another application was applied for in July of this year, but because of the transfer of ownership, that was abandoned. And now that's why we're here. And staff is very happy to see this being done, because this is the appropriate action. And that's what the commission had wanted at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. That is helpful, I'm sure, for everyone to hear the history of this building. And I think Carl said it. We're all very happy, and thank you for being persistent to the owner of and restoring this to what it should be and putting it to good use, because it's a lovely little building. But that's my side commentary. We'll move on to commission questions and comments. Mr. Edmund.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this certainly looks like a very appropriate treatment to this building. I had a couple of questions. So you don't anticipate being able to reuse any of the brick from the Lorraine facade or any of the other little stone medallions and accents? Is that right?
I think, well, and our construction team can also comment on it. I think some of the sandstone looks like we would be able to save, especially at the top as we get into some of the other pieces. That becomes obviously a little more difficult. I know we were looking at getting a match. I know, once again, talking with our reps over at Thomas Brick, this sandstone in particular, I think came out of a quarry likely over in Lorraine and Amherst, sandstone capital of the world, of course, that they could be able to find this kind of off gray brick pretty easily to get the match.
So you're looking at doing replacements with actual natural sandstone?
Yeah, and that was one of the comments as a request of the last board. We were originally looking at cast stone to get a match, but they had kind of pushed for that other piece as well. So it's certainly something that's doable. We're looking into those pieces as well right now.
And a quick question about the windows. They're wood-clad windows. They're wood-clad in aluminum. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that's that A series from Anderson, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes. And
so you'll be able to get the same anodized color in the storefront and in the window cladding?
Yeah. I think they're pretty close.
Okay. And then finally, do you think you need any temporary shoring on the facade before this construction gets underway?
I'll let Paul answer that.
Yeah, this is Paul of Midstate. Going back to the sandstone real quick, don't see a problem saving like the little corner pieces by the windows and all the rows and everything on top. I think we can save all of that and reuse those, put those back in. For the shoring, yeah, we would have to brace it's the worst spots are in between the windows here on the front. So we would put bracing on there just so while we're demoing it, nothing, after we take the weight off the top of it, nothing comes loose and falls down. So that would be the main focus of the bracing. And then we'd also put some shoring on the inside from the basement all the way up, just to help support once we take this weight off, so we don't have any issues.
So I take a mid-state as the mason for the project.
Yes.
So so you've got somebody who really has the capacity to do the historic work appropriately, I think. Well, I think this is very appropriate and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Other questions and comments from the commission? Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to express my enormous gratitude to the new owner. Congratulations. This was a real battle, and we lost it pretty miserably. I was really distressed to see that this building was, about to be demolished. I really did think that it could have been saved, and I always questioned how unsafe it really was if they still had a barber in there until fairly recently. So I'm just really, really happy to see this. I'm really happy to see that a local stakeholder is gone in here and is going to be bringing it back. I wish you much success, and I fully support this project.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the applicant's explanation of what they've gone through with Thomas Brick to try to find a Glengarry match for the existing masonry that will have to be replaced. I have a question about the mortar. Typically with a building this age, it would be an on-site mixed mortar with a slightly larger aggregate. And I wondered if any attempt is being made to try to at least match a color of the existing mortar, if not the actual texture of the existing mortar on the building.
Yeah, I think as we continue this process with the brick, obviously the cleaning portion is going to help us determine that color as well, which is why we don't have anything presented specifically right now for that. But I think I don't see any problem, at least with the color, to be able to get a match. Paul might have a better answer on texture in that part with his masonry work, but I think matching the color, I think, is something else that we can accomplish here by getting a close color, even if there's a couple of processes either with an acid wash or something like that that can adjust to a degree.
So is the restoration contractor available to comment on?
Sorry, my phone was ringing there. Yeah, no, the mortar, the color, I mean, it's a red, it's like a maroon. So I think, once we clean it, we'll get that true color. And it does have like that heavy aggregate concrete sand, which isn't an issue. We do a lot of projects where you just, you mix that heavy aggregate in with the mortar, and then once you give it that recessed look, it kind of pulls that aggregate out so you can see it. And I don't see a problem at all matching the mortar.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I appreciate the effort being put into that. Thank you.
Well, hearing a fairly consistent round of support for this project, would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Redmond?
I would move that the project be approved as presented.
Excellent. We have a motion by Mr. Redmond. Do we have a second?
Second from Tony.
Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? No? All right, Mr. Brunges, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Brancatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trouser,
Yes.
Ms. Straub.
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
excellent. Well, thank you again for your persistence and your, what you staying true to this building. And we look forward to seeing this redeveloped.
Of course, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. And as the weather turns, don't forget shuffleboard's a great fall and winter activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to our next applicant located 10828 Drexel Avenue, request for demolition.
All right, thank you all. Carl, would it be possible for me to share my screen? I actually updated our slides slightly. If not, that's okay.
Actually, no, we would have needed that.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's no problem. So, my name is Alex Abramowitz. I am the manager of the Demolition Bureau here in Department of Building and Housing. With me is Brett Parsons, our Cleveland Foundation Fellow, who started in July of this year. And we are here to put forward the proposed demolition of this property, 10828 Drexel, which, just as a correction, is in the Grantwood Allotments Historic District, contrary to what that slide just said. Can you advance the? Thanks. Okay, so a bit of background about this property. I will let you all take a look and read that. But essentially, this has long been vacant for quite some time. What I will correct that is that this property did actually just transfer into state forfeiture late in August of this year, and that obviously does change the ownership circumstances around it. But just to be clear, this property has been vacant since 2006. We have been getting complaints on it since 2009. It has been owned by the now defunct Glenville Development Corporation since 2013. And essentially, this has just been sitting as is, not causing problems per se in the way that some other properties are. This is not the sort of known home for illicit activity or illegal activity that other properties we deal with are, but we do get complaints on it. We've had to board it up, and it continues to sit as it is. So essentially, our plan here is to tear this property down and go from there, and we'll get more into all of that. Okay, thank you. So as you can see, this is on Drexel, just east of 105th. We are down the block from the recreation center there. You see that's in the old, I believe, synagogue once upon a time. And if you can advance the slide, Carl, this is, and one more too, really on a well-maintained block. To the east of this property is a home that's getting actively rehabbed. When we were out there on our site visit today, last week, the owner who lives down the block let us take a peek inside. Looks really good. It's progressing well. Smell of very fresh lumber going in, and it's exciting to see a property not go down this path. And a big difference there is that that house was well sealed up and didn't sort of get into the state of disrepair that we've seen at this property. So if you want to keep going here, Carl. And this property has several unsealed openings and has for quite some time. Right here is we're looking at the, I guess, carriage house in the back. It's a pretty large structure. This is off kilter and leaning a bit. I don't think anybody wants to get particularly close to it, and is sort of understood, including by the local design review committee last week, that there's an understanding that this property could certainly go because of the structural condition that it's in. But that's way back at the back of the lot there. The house itself, these photos are, I believe, from the beginning of this year. In general, you see what you see when a house has sat for years on end and hasn't been attended to. Lots of deterioration, and at a certain point, that deterioration leads to conditions that make rehab less tenable. Inside of the house, I'm sure others that were on one of our site visits may be able to speak to this a bit more, but a lot of your sort of significant interior architectural details are destroyed or in really tough condition. There wasn't much, at least that I encountered, that you would say, oh, that's, you know, perfect. Let's just, if we could even just get that out of here and put it somewhere, that would be a real savings. The house is in rough shape. Most notably, and you can see it in this bottom left photo, there is a large hole in the building envelope that extends from the first floor all the way up to the second and into the attic. There's also several busted out windows that leave this property open to the elements, and you see some real dampness and rot in the framing of the building as a result. Some more interior photos. You can keep going, Carl. Here's the second floor there on the right. There's that large hole leaving this open to the elements. That window to the left of it is also open. So as this has sat for years and years, and I can't tell you when that hole appeared, but I can tell you that every day it's open, this gets less workable. And that's just kind of the reality of it. Some more, you can advance to the next slide. You can just flip through these. That attic there on the bottom left, it's not well captured in that photo, but the ceiling there we saw some light coming through there last week, and that in general you've got some water leaking in up into the attic from that area as well, separate from that two-story hole in the side of the building envelope. The basement, it's a basement, somewhat, perhaps the least notable or remarkable compared to the rest of the house. Asbestos survey, our abatement contractor will have their work cut out for them a good bit. Quite a bit of asbestos containing pipe wrap in this property, but that would get dealt with by a licensed contractor. So a little more about these adjacent properties. Just to the west, and we spoke with some neighbors on our last site visit here. The Cloud family are grandparents. Their house is directly adjacent to this one to the west, and their property, like really, I would say every other property on this block, is really well maintained. The grass is cut, paint is fresh. There's a trampoline in the back. They have grandkids that visit from time to time, and this property is right there. And they've said that they would like to see this gone, and that they have lived adjacent to it for long enough. On the other side, we have Paul Robinson, who owns 10832 Drexel. He lives down the block a little further to the west and is pretty obviously familiar with this neighborhood. That was the house that we went and took a little tour inside of. He basically said that this house, the one that is in front of you today, 10828 Drexel, is in much worse shape than what he's working on. And he too would like to see it come down. Given that this is in state forfeiture now, it's fairly easy to imagine a situation where this property is then owned by one of those two owners. It would be easy for the city to pull this property and put it into the city land bank and transfer it as a side lot. There is a side lot across the street from this property. If you advance to the next slide, Carl. Oh, those are those two we just mentioned. And now across the street. We've got a couple lots across the street. Yes, there is a non-compliant fence across the street, but in the scheme of things, I would say that is a relatively small problem. This block looks really well maintained, and I understand the issues caused by missing teeth, and we don't want to lose historic assets and all the rest. But when I am weighing the alternatives here and what paths we might realistically go down, I just don't know if getting to a restored home at 10828 Drexel is a particularly likely outcome. Yes, this went into state forfeiture, but based on what it would take to rehab this and the housing market that this property sits in, a successful rehab would really require some considerable subsidy and support. And I certainly can't speak to the existence of such a program. And to be honest with you, for what you would spend to rehab this home, we could probably rehab 2 or 3 other historic homes that are in better condition in its stead. So that's just something that I'm weighing. I'm not going around looking for houses to tear down. These come to us because of the issues that they cause. At the Landmarks Committee, Design Review Committee last week, we had a good discussion sort of about whether what demolition would do here. And I think there are arguments to be made in all directions, but I guess I would like you guys to consider the possibility that in its current state, this property is a drag on future reinvestment and ongoing reinvestment in surrounding properties. When something like this is there, it's a drag on property values. It can be harder to get that loan to do home renovation. So sometimes getting rid of that one bad apple can free up future opportunities. Let's see. Is there another slide there? Okay. That one I included didn't make the cut. That's fine. So yes, there's the parcel. Essentially, our plan would be to save any trees we can save, get rid of the accessory structure in the back and the main structure in the front, and go from there. Happy to answer any questions. I know a lot of people on this call were, or at least a decent chunk, were at one of our 2 site visits, and I think that context will be helpful for anybody that needs to vote one way or another on this, and I'm happy to take any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with a staff overview of the site visit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were 2 separate site visits. I didn't include the slide. I included the slides or the pictures that I took there. Yes, a significant amount of investment would be needed. We agree that the barn in the back, or I agree that the barn in the back can come down. That is leaning significantly. I just want to give a little bit more history beyond the site visit and talk about the Grantwood allotment and this house in particular. The Grantwood Allotment was created by the Deming Realty Company in 1907. And this house, along with many in the earliest portions of this allotment, were actually designed by the Realty Company. This was an AmeriCorps survey area in 2013 to 2014, and it was designated as a historic district in 2014. So this is one of our more recent ones. The house is actually built in 1908 for owner Christian Hanger, who was the owner and founder of the CF Hanger Carriage and Wagon Company in 1892, and would later become the CF Hanger Company. He had some patents dealing with dump trucks, and like I said, the architect was the Deming Realty Company. This was one. There's a handful of them that were done by that company in this area. In 1922, the property was sold to Charles Henry Phillips, who served as a bishop. Charles Henry Phillips was born into slavery on January 17th, 1858. And he is noted for founding and serving the California, New Mexico, Arizona Colored Methodist Episcopal Conference from 1902 to 1940. He organized many CME districts and churches, sometimes called Phillips Chapels. Between 1910 and 1932, his efforts helped raise the number of CMA members in Ohio from 250 to 2,100. He was first schooled at home, but then later attended Atlanta University in Georgia. And in 1878, he was licensed to preach. He received a BA, MA, and degree of medicine from Central Tennessee College in Nashville. So he is an influential member of African American history. He also is the author of the history of the Colored Methodist Episcopal Church in America, as seen by this page here. This is the third edition. The first edition was in 1898. After he passed away in 1951, the property transferred to his wife and daughter. In 1954, the use of the property was changed to two-family. As you can see, here is the barn being converted from a barn to a secondary residence. Stayed in the family all the way up until 1968, when the property was sold to Crawford and Willie Atwater. Crawford and Willie divorced in 76, and it stayed in that family. And I'm not sure the relationship between Vita and Monique, but I understand maybe daughter, mother-daughter. It was obtained by Cuyahoga County Land Bank in sheriff's sale in 2012, transferred to Glenville Development Corporation in 2013, as mentioned, and then Glenville went out of business in 2015. And also, as mentioned, this went into the state of Ohio foreclosure last month. So I want to give some background on the history. Yes, it would take a lot of effort, and as Alex mentioned, that there's no known programs, which I think is part of the problem here, is that what do we do? Why didn't this move forward earlier? Why couldn't this be caught? And I think it's something that we're kind of trapped here, because if the Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corporation will not take properties in our local historic districts. The city's land bank does not take properties with houses on them. So they want the vacant land. What do we do with them now? Where do we go? And I think that's a problem that really needs to be addressed in the future. And I think that's what this particular building has pointed out to us, is that we need another path for the landmarks. So I'll just put that there. It is in bad condition. It would take, I heard, anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 for rehab. And it'd be unfortunate to lose this significant building and contributing building, but I don't know what other options we have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. That is a very interesting history, as Ms. Petrus also said within the chat. I would never have known. So thank you for the hard work of pulling this forward. I'm sorry, did you say that was there a design review feedback on this? Did I miss that?
Madam Chair.
Rob Norton is here from the local design review committee. He can give some more background on that.
Madam Chair, first want to thank Alex for his accurate description of the site visits for the property and our discussion at our meetings. For the request for demolition, Carl, thank you for the additional history regarding the house. If I'm honest, that's something I was not aware of, at least not to that extent. But Carl, your comments accurately reflect the frustration from our local design review committee. Our committee reviews these cases for 3 separate historic districts in the Glenville area. And unfortunately, 10828 Drexel is not the only property that is in this condition. Our history has been never to vote and approve for demolition of a historic property. From a preservation standpoint, if a property is not there, it cannot be preserved. You eliminate all possibilities for renovation and restoration. We did make a motion for approval of the demolition of the garage structure, as it was clearly a safety hazard. But the main structure itself, the term still has good bones, despite the pictures and depictions of the condition of the property. And our committee would recommend holding off with the demolition of the building until such time as additional resources can be identified, possibly with the assistance of Landmarks Commission, City of Cleveland, and any other interested parties in truly preserving these homes in our historic districts. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now open the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Brigatelli.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The site visit was pretty illuminating in looking at how bad the property has gotten. And I think more so than just a deterioration now from those photos that were presented by Alex to the condition that we saw even when we walked through the last time. The property has been breached numerous times and elements of any historic character have been removed. And there's been a significant amount of additional damage, so that this property continues to be a blight in the area, and it seems like it gets breached often. And so it also creates a danger and is dragging down the values to the neighboring properties. And the neighbors have really, when we were there, raising concerns about that property continuing to stand in the condition that it's in. So I think it shows that it only continues to deteriorate, and given that back area that's open to the elements and collapsing, also a danger for further collapse as the weather continues to change. So it was pretty unfortunate to see the condition it got to and how fast it's deteriorating now. And that also that back building, which is leaning further left than any political candidate. I think it was a good site visit to see how far it's gone. So raises a lot of concerns about leaving that property up. So I appreciate that site visit getting done. I had a quick question for Alex on, he noted that this is a state forfeiture property now. I don't think they have it's not deeded to the state. So the ownership is still the previous owner. Has been my general understanding on state forfeiture. They're only the title interest, which is why they put their name on it. Is that?
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, all right, thanks. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Mr. Edmund?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Carl, for that really important information. And also for that just sort of contextual comment about, how do we avoid getting to this state, and I know that's come up before, and I don't have an answer for it, but I'm deeply sympathetic to it. And I apologize I wasn't able to go on the site visit, but I have reviewed the pictures before and again this morning, and particularly with the large breaches of the building envelope. Of course, I think that estimate of 150 to 300,000 is probably well on the low range, and I think that unless there were a plan for stabilization, preservation that was imminent, I'm afraid that the deterioration is going to continue to accelerate. Just looking at the state of where we're at now and what's the best thing in that context and moving forward for the street and the neighborhood, I suspect that regretfully, deeply regretfully, honestly, demolition is probably the best thing at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmund. Just a quick question to Alex. How many properties in the neighborhood have been demolished since 2014? And are there more proposed?
How many passed? I would need to look into for you. I believe I sent a list recently as to anything on our radar that is in this area. Give me just a moment.
As you look it up, I think it just does bring to light how this is turning into more of a cyclical problem. Without the opportunities and avenues like the land bank where houses can remain and be sold to people who do have the interest and the wherewithal to try to restore these houses. Right now, I personally feel like we're, handcuffed a little bit because, this house has, as Carl just, enlightened us all, a very interesting, important history, but has gotten to a point of dilapidation that it's, demolition by neglect. So it's very hard. Mr. Evans said it, like with deep sympathy and regret that trying to see what options there are for this house based on the condition. It looks like it does have some good bones. It has an amazing history. It just needs an opportunity for somebody to take advantage of, and it would need, a fair amount of work to bring it back to its original stature.
And Julie, I have that for you. There are 5 more properties in this landmarks area that are at a minimum we're aware of that are condemned and we may want to look at demolishing in the future. 4 of those are in for state forfeiture, and I believe me that we're not really trying to move the ball down the field on those unless they are getting put on our radar, whether by neighbors or council members and so on. And to your point, I think one thing Carl and I have discussed is that taking steps to mothball these and protect them before they get to this condition can really make more desirable outcomes a lot more possible. I am not an expert by any measure in that, but making sure that the building envelope is sealed up. There's no easy entry. Anything in the roof is tarped up so that at least the condition is stable, is huge. And I gather we have some ability to do that as the city, but it's not a program that is up and running. And I think it's easy enough to imagine what that could look like, and that we could shunt off a lot of properties from going down this road where the financial viability of rehab becomes a lot more realistic.
And this is such a young historic district, and to have that many that will be coming or has the opportunity to be coming in front of us, and soon after this one, if we don't take steps like this or like that. So I know it's in vision and reality, there is a gap there right now, but I think it's something that we collectively need to start talking more about, because it seems like we're seeing more and more, and this is just a great example of demolition by neglect, not by requirement. But I don't know if you found how many buildings have been demolished since 2014, since this became a historic district.
To be honest, that would take me a little bit more of a
That's
dive.
okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. And I mean, obviously there's 2 across the street, and then this one would be a third, all within, a very small block area. So that just, something that we need to be aware of the missing teeth that we're causing, and these are now gaping holes that we're starting to see. I'll move on to other commission members' questions or comments. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Given that there's some historic significance associated with this house, being that it was the home of Charles Phillips and his family for a very long time, is there any resources that could possibly be mobilized to rehab it in conjunction with that history? I'm thinking of like the Langston Hughes house. And sometimes it takes a long time to accumulate enough cash to create to rehab these under those circumstances, but it just seems like there should be some way to make this happen. It's in really bad shape. It's probably not quite structurally unsound, although it's getting there. It's hard to see these things keep coming up, and where we keep being put in this position. And I'm just trying to figure out if there's any way to make this work. So
Oh, Carl, do you have any feedback on that?
Unfortunately, I do not. I'm sure there's probably grants out there and other items that could be researched, but I think it's at a point where we would have needed to know about this much earlier and had more, like if we had known about the history of this a year or 2 ago, or knowing that when they went out of business, when Glenville Development Corporation went out of business, what was supposed to happen to their assets. One of their other, they still own 9 properties total, and 8 of them are vacant lots. One of them, the vacant lot, was the Otto Narvalite building, which was a designated Cleveland landmark, which was taken down in a forthwith demolition. So how do we identify this? I think it's being more proactive and identifying which ones are in a state that need to be looked at. But at this point, I think it's, I don't know what to say, what to do with this property. I think my heart tells me that I want to save it, but I'm looking at the realistic point that does it come down? So I don't have answers on funding, but it's something we need to develop as a city, realistically. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just from the standpoint of growing up in the Glenville area and just the 3 historic districts, and we're talking East Boulevard, Magnolia Wade Park, and now Grantwood Allotments. there potentially is going to be a flood of cases about properties like this. Some with equal history attached to the homes. So if there's anything landmarks can do to find out about funding, find out about an alternative to really all of us kind of throwing our hands up and saying there's nothing we can do. Hopefully with the new administration with the city, it'll get someone's attention to take a look at it. Because my opinion, the wave is coming. I grew up in Glenville. I still live in Glenville in the Magnolia Wade Park district, and just familiar with a lot of the housing stocks just from that perspective. So if there's any chance of developing something, the sooner that's done, the better it will be for all of these historic districts. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think that it does warrant an offline conversation to start that moving forward, because as you mentioned, it feels like the wave is coming by how frequently we're starting to see these come forward. But I do think, maybe Carl, we can take that offline with the director and start to see what options and opportunities there are. Mr. Brancatelli, additional question or comment?
Yes, I just wanted to do a quick clarifying point as a follow-up to what Michelle raised. This property was in public ownership for the past decade. The county land bank took this property in. It was transferred to Glenville. So in terms of resources, there were plenty of opportunities for this property to be preserved while it was in public ownership. So this isn't new. This has been around for a decade in public ownership. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that certainly we know that this property was on the road to massive neglect and being vacant for a long time before it ever was transferred to the ownership of the Glenville Development Corporation. And it seems to me that one of the earliest flags that we can utilize to try to identify properties that might be in jeopardy is just looking at the payment of property taxes. And so I think if we developed, and again, we can pursue the details of this offline, but if there was a facilitation between the city and the county, just to understand early on when property taxes are no longer being paid, then I think that would be the first indication to target the status of those properties and see if we could be more proactive to keep the current owners engaged. Or if we understand that the property's been abandoned early enough, it would take far less resources to stabilize that property and make it viable for rehabilitation. So again, we need to pursue the details, but that would be my suggestion, to pursue the first flag being lack of payment of property taxes. Thank you.
No, great point. So I think these are all great points and something we do need to talk more about. But unfortunately, I don't think we're going to solve it this meeting. So we will need to, Carl, I think we should have an offline, as we mentioned, with the director and start seeing how we can move this forward. To bring us back focused on this property, do others have questions or comments on the proposal? Would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Tony. I would make a motion to approve for demolition.
Thank you, Mr. Brancatelli. Do we have a second?
Yeah, regretfully, I will second that motion and clarify that it's both the main house structure and the outdoor.
Thank you for that second and clarification of the full scope. Further discussion? All right, Mr. Brunges, please call roll and announce the results.
Sanderson,
Reluctantly, yes.
Mr. Brancatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasic,
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
No.
Madam Chair, the motion passes 7-1.
Right. Well, regrettably, we do see this moving forward, but I will hope that, Alex, that we can all work together to find a new avenue for future cases like this and start identifying these before they get to this condition.
I look forward to it. I'll be reporting up to my director and hopefully we can find a good path forward.
Excellent. Thank you.
Madam Chair, on that point, I would welcome to participate in that discussion. There's an incredible amount of tools that the city has at its as a municipality for receivership, for doing improvements, doing interim measures. There's board of revision sales, I think, to Mr. Strickland's point on properties that are tax delinquent. So there's a great amount of tools out there. We just need to kind of marshal them and identify how we can use those in advance of them getting to this state. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, Mr. Brancatelli, if you could maybe jot those down for us collectively, and then we can work together to start seeing how we can use those tools. And sorry to say this, but please send them to Carl so that we have them in a consolidated point. Carl's shoulders have just gotten a lot bigger in the last month. All right, continuing us forward, we'll move on to our next applicant on the Equinox located at 1424 West 48th Street. Revisions to townhome project. Carl, do you want to give us a little history on this prior? Thank you. I just see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This was approved as noted by the Landmarks Commission in 2020. Unfortunately, it went through the entire process, got to a point, but the fire department found that there was issues with their some of the code issues with the fire department. So they redeveloped the plan and went back to the local committee with a revised plan, which did not meet. It did not get a good reception. So instead, they returned to their original plan and made revisions to that to make sure it was compliant to fire code. So because this is instead of a new plan, it is a revised plan. Don and I had talked about this prior to him leaving, that we decided to bring this back to the commission for revisions here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brunges. We'll now welcome the applicant to give us a quick overview if needed, or just highlight the revisions from previous approval to what you're presenting today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caleb. I own this site on West 48th between Detroit and Clinton Avenue. As Carl mentioned, we made some modification for the design and the site plan to meet fire code and for a better constructability. So I'll let my architect Jeff to compare both versions.
Hi there, Jeff Foster, Pato Architects. Appreciate the time, Commission. I'll just kind of walk you through some of the changes. As Caleb mentioned, they were twofold. One was to meet some of the requirements from the fire department's review. And the second was, as we started to take this into construction documents and through design development, we found there were a few liberties that were taken with some of the unit plans prior. And as we started to work through those and make some changes to the unit plans, it also impacted the site layout. But if you want to flip to the next slide, with the submission, we tried to do this as a side-by-side. So you could see on the left-hand side of all of these is the previously approved plan, and then the one on the right is the current plan. In the upper right, one of the concerns that fire had was locations of fire hydrants. So that diagram shows you where the neighboring fire hydrants are that surround the site. The site is the big white spot in the center there. I'll just kind of run you through some of the basic changes that we had. One of them had to do with some materials, and we'll get to those when we get to some of the exteriors. But from a site planning perspective, between buildings, we have the buildings named 1 through 5. Between building 3 and 4, there's sort of a pocket where the units come together. There were some navigation issues with turning in and out of that. So we've been able to make a couple of adjustments, in particular with building A, which is the single family unit up along 48th. We were able to shrink the depth of that to give us a little bit more working room so that we had a turning radius coming in and out of unit D1 and B3. As we developed the units a little further as well, we were able to get the full 20 feet that the fire department was looking for. So they were looking for a lane that extended all the way through the site that gave them a minimum of 20 feet. But you can see from a urban planning standpoint, the organic feel of this is still there, knowing full well that this neighborhood is quite a tapestry of different forms and different shapes. We wanted to completely avoid that repetitive cookie cutter feel from townhouse projects, and we wanted to maintain that organic, natural feel. If you want to flip to the next slide. Landscape plan is somewhat verbatim. We made a couple of adjustments just with where the locations of some of the beds were, but the planting material is still the same. Lighting approach is still the same, just small wall packs over garage doors and downlights over entrances. So that's very consistent and the same as what it was prior. Next slide. Unit A, which is the single family unit along 48th, does not change. So architecturally, it's very important that fits in with the 2-story single family scale of the neighboring properties. So that diagram on the upper top of the page then shows you how that fits in beautifully with the scale of the houses to the left and north and south of it. So these views are the same as what they were prior. Next slide. These show you somewhat of the before and after, and this is where we get into some of the material changes. The prior approval had a wood siding down at the base of all the units, and as we started to look at that from a constructability, in particular from a wearability standpoint, with these being condominiums, that's a maintenance issue over time, so we've changed that to a brick base on all of these units. We think that's going to wear better in the short and long term and just provide a better product for them over time. As you look at the elevations and renders of these as well, there was some liberty taken in the former design with window placement, window sizes that didn't really match up to the plan. So we've gone through and sort of updated that, and what you see in the current rendered views and current elevations match the plans. So befores and afters, we made the changes. Once you get above the first floor into the second floor of these units, we did maintain a wood look. But instead of using actual wood, it's a wood grain metal so that we can keep the warmth of that material because it does a nice job breaking up the facades and giving it some warmth. So that was important to us. And then the balance of the materials on these is the same, which is a painted fiber cement siding. Next slide. Some views from the interior to the site. From a constructability standpoint, I'll point out on the top 2 renders, these do have rooftop decks. But we had some constructability issues with what was presented prior with somewhat of an open gable on the sides, and we've simplified that by still maintaining the gable form, which is important to view from 48th, but also from the ground, and that these have those rooftop decks that remain. Comparing the window placement on the 2 elevations as well, you can see that the placement is slightly different just when it lines up with some of the interior functions with bathrooms and closets and those types of things. We didn't want to show something that either wasn't constructible or wasn't something that was actually going to happen. Aesthetically, though, it's the same organic feel with the mix of light and dark siding so that each unit has a very distinct identity and that they read as individual units. And then the landscaping throughout, again, softens all of the edges and creates a nice soft feel as you walk through the space. Next slide. Palette of materials. The only change that you would see from what is prior would be in the lower right where our brick is, and that's a warm kind of a blend of a lighter and a darker brown. That's a McAvoy brick from Thomas Brick. And then on the left-hand side is changing from the actual wood to a wood grain siding in a teak color. The balance of the materials on here are the same as what was presented prior. Next. And then these next series of slides are the unit sizes. These range anywhere from 1,500 square feet to 2,000 square feet, which is very consistent with what was presented prior. And then these balance of these slides run into the exterior elevations. So Carl, if you just want to flip through those. Unit types B, C, and D. Elevations of Unit A, which is the single family unit. Same as prior, and then the following two buildings 2 and 3, and then followed by buildings 4 and 5. We've included the calculations for the townhouse overlay as well that show first floor articulation of glazing and also show our material placements to document those as well. So I believe that's a summary of the changes, and I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Carl, did this go back to local design review? Remind me.
It did not.
Okay.
The new plan that was received was abandoned, so they went back to the original plan and made the modifications to this original plan.
Perfect. All right.
I will add that I'm still waiting for the final townhouse review on it. I'm hoping that that'll be done. And I believe this still has to go to the planning commission for conditional use for the townhouses in this district.
Perfect. Thank you. So we'll open up the floor for questions and comments. All right, I'll start us off. Yeah, this looks like fairly consistent. Yeah, it's obviously a modification from what we approved previously, but I do not see anything that I object to based on the revisions. I think your site work is more realistic and logical, and it actually appears from the renderings that you actually have a little bit more landscaping or appreciation of the landscaping that you will have than you previously had. And appreciate the materiality updates so that, for the durability. So I'm in support of the new proposal. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was not in support of the previous proposal, and I am not in support of this one. The proposal does not provide, I think, residents enough individual green space. I don't think there's a place to, set out your dog or put up a grill. And I know the area well. The district has yards and some yard space and some individual green area. And I think that this proposal is inconsistent with that. So I am not in support.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Feedback from other commission members? Mr. Brancatelli?
Quick question, does this have the support from the local council member?
Mr. Bridges, do you remember from the previous review?
I do not remember from the previous review. I'd have to dig those notes out.
Mr. Brancatelli, do you have additional feedback?
No, does the presenter know if they have a support letter from the local councilman?
Caleb, do you know if you have that?
I showed a 16 unit to local councilman, Councilman McCormick, and he suggested to decrease to 12 to 13 unit. Then we present 12, 13 unit to Block Club, and they were okay with it. And when I presented to the Ohio City Design Review, they suggest us to decrease the density from 13 to 11. So now you see the density is 11 unit here.
And they support, Ohio City then supported it?
You mean Ohio City Inc. or Design
Yes.
Review?
Ohio City Inc.
Yeah, I believe so. He support Ben Tremble supported last application when I get the certificate here.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, Mr. Trimble's here. Can he give some insight to that, please?
I was just going to ask for that. Mr. Trimble, do you have any feedback for us on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Ben Trimble, Chief Real Estate Officer at Ohio City Incorporated. So this was reviewed by the local block club, the 4552 block club, and was approved as presented here, actually with one more unit, I believe, at the time. We don't tend to take like specific stances of support or non-support of projects. We tried to send them to the local block club, to the local design review committee, so that they go through the community feedback process. It was supported by both the local design review committee at that time, as well as the block club at that time.
Thank you for that feedback.
Thanks, Ben.
Of course.
Other questions and comments from the commission? Mr. Edmund, I saw your hand up, but I see it down now. Do you have feedback?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment. I mean, I wasn't here when the previous iteration was approved, but it seems like this iteration is merely an improvement on that, generally speaking. And so I would find it hard to disapprove at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any further questions and comments from the commission, would someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Edmund?
I'll move for approval.
Thank you. As presented?
Yes.
Thank you for that motion to approve as presented. Mr. Strickland?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. We have a second. Any further discussion? No? Mr. Brunches, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Brancatelli?
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio?
Abstain.
Mr. Dryer? Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Tarasic?
Yes.
Ms. Trapp?
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes 6-1 with one abstention.
Well, congratulations and good luck with your project. Look forward to seeing it
Thank
move
you for your
forward.
time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our next applicant located 1865-69 West 22nd Street, the renovation and addition.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. This is Paul Began from Began Architectural Design. We also have the owner's representative, Mr. Brian Spear, on as well. You may recall this project we had presented to you previously and had some comments from both local design review and from this commission. And this is a representation of a modified scheme based on those comments. So a quick refresher here. This is just an overall location plan so that you know where this, refresh your memory to where this project is at. It's behind the West Side Market on the top of the hill, going to be at the end, bookend of the renovation of Irishtown Bend. So it's the parcel that's kind of pushed right up next to on West 22nd when you go, if you've ever driven down behind there, it's the end. There's a little cul-de-sac there, and this is the only building across from the church there. We can go on to the next slide, Carl. Thank you. And just some refresher photos of the building that is there. Historically, what happened with these buildings is both this, although it looks like one, kind of looks like one building, this was two separate buildings that when they put in the RTA line there, these were relocated to this site from their original location. One of the buildings actually was flipped around backwards, and then they were kind of sewn together with some masonry to connect the two buildings, and make it as one building. So it's two separate 3-story buildings. There's kind of a hallway and stair in the middle. That's the connector piece. Just to give you a little bit of, again, a refresher background on this particular building site. We can go on to the next one. So the development plan for this is the same as it was previously. There is the existing building, or 2 buildings, and we're doing another addition to that building on the south side of the building, as well as to the east side. The south side of the addition is going to be another 3-story addition to match the size and scale of the other 2 buildings there. And the addition to the east side, which is the one that's going to be facing the Cuyahoga River down the valley slope, is a 1-story garage addition with a roof deck on top of it to be accessed from what would be the second floor in this particular building. We can go on to the next one. These are, I have 2 pages of elevations just so that you can see what we're planning to do. Overall, the scheme for the development of this is to take those 2 buildings, recreate the entrance to them between the 2 buildings that are there right now, and then mirror that entrance over to serves that separation between that and the new addition to these buildings as well. Comments previously, because we did have a rooftop addition and or structure that was the majority of our redesign, was to bring that kind of back into something that was a little bit more acceptable to members of the board. It was more of a separate structure before, so that this one is a little bit more integral, which we try to follow the comments from local design review and this board as well too, to make that, again, that rooftop structure more integral into the design. And on the ground floor level, we are going to plan to do a sunken courtyard as well, and recreate some new entry steps into the building, so that is out on the outside of this. We can go on to the next one, Carl. On the east side of the building, again, that's the side that's facing the Cuyahoga River. This is just a rendering of what the 1-story garage addition is going to do. There's going to be 6 garages with carriage-like type doors, rooftop deck with an open metal railing above it. And you could see a little bit, the rooftop structure doesn't reach all the way to the back of the building, so it will be set back a little bit on this particular facade. We can go to the next one, Carl. So we have a couple renderings here just to show what the renovation looks like. Again, the 2 existing buildings, we're going to recreate that entrance there, actually move it up to the floor level from the outside with some new exterior steps, a lowered courtyard between those 2 entrance pieces. Entrance pieces are going to be in a cast stone that will continue up. We're going to add on to the parapet of this building, as well as the new addition, to move it up a little bit higher and add again the decorative cornice to this in order to do that. All the windows are going to be replaced. We were just reviewing those last week. They're going to be aluminum clad wood windows to replace the white vinyl windows that are there now. We do know we need to come back before you once we have our final material selections made, including the new brick for the addition, and our cast stone pieces, obviously some window samples, and for final landscaping. But we wanted to present before you so that we can move forward with our next steps in our design process. And you can go to the next slide, Carl. There's two more renderings to just show the different views and our perspectives from, again, this is kind of across the street if you were coming out of the church on West 22nd. We can go to the next one. This is kind of what you would see, again, a little bit more eye level perspective, so you can kind of see some of the detail with the courtyard and the entrance.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. That is very helpful. We will begin with feedback from the local design review committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Nate Lowe with Ohio City Incorporated. This was seen at the last local design review meeting. No formal action was taken as there was no quorum, but several comments were made about particularly the Juliet Balcony and the cast stone as being inauthentic elements of it, as well as the carriage style door garage. But they did state that it was an improvement from the previous iteration of the design. And I believe this will come back again for final, final review one more time. So those were essentially the main comments made. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that update and summary. We will open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who'd like to start us off? Mr. Edmond?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a nice improvement over the last presentation. I recall we had some of the sort of roof treatment elements, we had some comments on. The balcony and the cast stone are not something that's represented in the original building. I think the existing architecture is pretty modest, and it has a sort of in my opinion, the existing architecture has a sort of materiality and proportion that's kind of pleasing. But I don't think that there are really significant design elements that need to be strictly adhered to. So, it does have a bit of a postmodern flavor to it, but I don't think it's completely out of character, certainly not unacceptable. But I think this has moved nicely in a good direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an improvement over the prior design that we reviewed. I do agree that the Juliet Balcony is probably doesn't enhance this design. I would do away with that. And I would probably prefer to see a natural stone. If that's not affordable, I would probably substitute brick for the cast stone, especially on the two vertical elements there. But yeah, it's an improvement over the last design. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Edmond?
So this is a question for Ms. Anderson. If they replace the cast stone with the brick, which I think is an interesting idea, do you think it should be a matching brick or a contrasting brick?
I think it could be a contrasting brick that could give it some interest.
Or maybe just a subtle contrast or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting idea. I like it. Thank you.
Ms. Trott, would you mind me asking a clarifying question as well, too, along those lines? On the cast stone, again, I just want to understand, natural stone would be okay, but if not, cast stone is not okay. And again, just in my experience, we use cast stone for replacement because we do a lot of historic renovations. We use cast stone as replacement for natural stone because we can modify it to look really close to as close to real stone as we need to. There's all kinds of different ways and treatments that we could do cast stone. It's not like, hey, it's going to be just concrete panels thrown up there. So I guess I want to understand the reason why, you know, a natural stone would be okay, but cast stone is not. And in the comment, thank you.
Ms. Anderson, you want to clarify? Oh, Ms. Anderson, I think you're muted.
Yeah, I just unmuted. Thank you. At least visually, and you know, I can usually see the difference. Just as a personal matter, I can usually see the difference between the cast stone and a natural stone. I just think visually it's more pleasing to see the natural stone. Yeah, like I said, I'm fine with the brick. But I can understand in certain situations where you're gonna need to replace something that cannot be found, and you use the cast stone because the original stone is just really not available. But that's not the situation we have here. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This is Brian Spear. Can I make a comment too?
Could you announce yourself, how you're related to the project?
Sure. I'm the manager of the Opportunity Zone Fund that owns this property.
Okay,
So I
thank you.
represent the ownership.
Go ahead.
We met a couple months ago and appreciated the comments that were there. We did our best to incorporate those comments. They were mostly related to the brackets and the roof structure. I think there was some follow-up related to the rear garage and wanting to see that, which we've provided here, and also with a modern interpretation of the historical structure on the new building on the south. As we went back and we redesigned this, you know, these, you know, given the construction costs that are here right now and some of the other things, this is an expensive proposal that from just an investment perspective doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The request that I would have based on Ms. Anderson's comments would be that, you know, when we move to natural stone versus cast stone, it makes something that is already very expensive and something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense just from a financial perspective, even more expensive, and it exacerbates the problem. And so the request would be that we would consider the cast stone or one of these other alternatives to give the building this aesthetic. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. Giancarlo?
Oh, yes, thank you. Yeah, this controversy or whatever conversation between natural stone and concrete is ongoing. I hear exactly the same story that I've been hearing for 30 years, that it's way more expensive, difficult to get, and it's not. So this gentleman here just mentioned how expensive it is. Did you actually price limestone, for example, versus cast concrete, and discovered that it was terribly more expensive?
This is based on feedback from the contractor. I didn't personally do that.
Okay. The other issue is, you know, longevity. You know, the cast stone has been around for millions of natural stone. Concrete doesn't really have a good reputation of longevity. But aside from that, I like the idea of an all brick building, and maybe you could do a soldier course over the windows and definitely eliminate that balcony. And maybe even the same brick, but with some different installation procedures, I think would be helpful. I mean, cast stone doesn't have any historical value. We're looking at a historical building. Mr. Began, would you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so again, we tried to tell a little bit about the history of how these buildings kind of came together here. First of all, I would disagree.
I understand that. We're not really looking at an historical.
So, right, yeah. So this is, you know, treatment differently, right? Because I think, you know, I do historical renovation projects.
Yes.
That's a different animal than this particular project, right? So when the original two buildings came together, right, what they ended up doing was putting a new brick facade on one of the buildings, which was actually the back of that building, and extending it across to attach to the first building, right? So that was how they kind of went by connecting those buildings together. You know, it really wasn't that successful. If you take a look at it, it's kind of, you know, I don't think they did a fantastic job. So part of us taking a look at it is historically, right, what they did is took two buildings and kind of put them together. We are taking a third building and adding to this, and how to address those joints between them from a design perspective is, you know, maybe we need to, since those are actually entrances, let's call attention to those entrances and let's have them be different materials, because in the history of this building is, you know, buildings being attached together and the entrance and stairs are between them. And so it's really kind of taking that differentiation of historically what's happening physically with the building and representing it as a different material on the front of the building. That's how we got to it on a design path, just so that you kind of know where we got to. So again, I think, you know, we would be open to looking at cast stone. I think that's the kind of intended look to go for. You know, if it is something that works within the budget, if there's a, you know, not a significant increase in dollars, I think that's something that we would consider.
Okay, well, you know, I think at least my perception of it is that we do not have an historical building, but we are creating an historical building. And I think the design is excellent. I mean, in that particular area, that neighborhood is interesting in general. It has some beautiful brickwork. So even if it were done, I mean, I appreciate and understand the contrast, and it's a very classical look, the mixture of brick with limestone. I would like to see it in natural limestone, and maybe as you suggested, look at it and see if there's a significant cost difference. I don't really think so. I mean, there's definitely a cost difference because it's a little more complicated to install a natural stone than it is a cast stone. But I don't think it's really that significant. Limestone is reasonably priced and readily available, as I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Giancarlo, for that feedback. Some additional feedback that I have is I would agree with the Juliet Balcony. It feels, although it's nice, I think in the execution with the removal of the two windows that it will be, you know, that are currently there, and then filling them in to create that. I wonder, is it going to achieve the look that you really want? You're going to continue to have sort of that quilt of multiple bricks, you know, with, you know, then in addition to introducing the new brick of the third floor above that. My personal opinion is I would favor keeping the two windows versus the Juliet Balcony. So you only have the insertion of the new brick where you're relocating the window on the right, I believe. Is that correct?
No, it's actually a little incorrect. So if we can go back to the photos real quick, Carl, you can kind of see what we got there. So the upper right photo is where we're at. So there was a door on the third floor that had been previously infilled. So part of what we are doing on the third floor is actually moving an existing window opening over so that they get them lined up. And then on the second floor, where we have a single window, is where we would make that opening wider. So there would not be any infill on the second floor with new brick to locate that Juliet Balcony. And if we can jump back to that rendering real quick, Carl, and just for an appreciation of we do what happened. So when taking the comments from the last time we came before you, let's make the rooftop construction more integral with the design. I do think that was the right direction, and we went through several iterations to get to this particular one. That we treat the fourth floor a little bit differently than the lower floors. So that's why we added 4 windows up at the top instead of sticking with the 3 that are there currently, and repeating it up to show a little bit differentiation. There is a soldier course that goes between the new and the old brick right there. So again, once we did that, and this is my opinion as a designer here, is now there's, the 3 windows and then the 4 windows. That middle facade seemed a little bit too overwhelming to be so plain. So we added the Juliet Balcony actually to kind of balance out the now taller facade in the middle. As far as that was the intent. Obviously, it has a practical function, so that particular unit could have some exterior space. But again, functionally, that's what we wanted to do. But aesthetically, I think it made sense in that larger facade to kind of help break down the scale of it.
Sure. I guess in execution, I personally still feel that less is more. You have such a simple front that I don't think it adds to the composition. I personally would rather see the 3 windows there, and then the 4th floor, I guess, being the 3 windows also, so that it reduces the amount of things that are on there versus added to it. I think you differentiate it with your soldier course so that it does, and will have that separation. And it's the continuation of the 3 windows, I think, is my personal opinion, just to simplify that. The exterior balcony or the elevated terrace on the left side, can you explain why you've gone to that unusual size and changed the detailing of the railing on that versus the other locations of the building? You have a very modern handrail over there versus your traditional aluminum picket that you have on the rest of the front.
Yeah, it is going to be, it's a different element, in my opinion, right? So, and we see this a lot on even historic buildings, right? They treat the front a little bit differently than they treat the back. So that's kind of the treatment of the railings here. Again, we haven't gotten to the final design on it, but yes, the intent is to be a little bit more modern, and that is actually going to tie in with the railings on the roof deck above the garages on the east side of the building.
I personally feel that since this sits and where it sits within the site, that this side of the building should be treated like the front and have that consistency. And so that when you approach this building, your detailing is very consistent. Because you are here for final approval, correct?
Well, I know we have to come back with material samples, so we might not get to a final, but we'd like to get to, yes, a final approval on the design, conditional upon review of materials and final landscaping would be ideal. I think I'd be okay with that. That was my intention to that, was to more match what's happening on the other side of the building, but I think I would be open to making that similar treatment in the design of the railings.
Yeah, with its railing of the entranceways just below, that just reinforces my comment. So you have consistent detailing across 3 of the elevations, or at least 2, that are the main street frontage. Can you explain your lighting approach?
Yeah, I imagine we're going to have some landscaping lighting, but the intent is to do some nice sconces at the entrances, so that we have some light there on those entry steps as well too. There will probably be some sidewall lights down in the courtyard, so that stays kind of well done at nighttime. But again, we may have some landscaping lighting, but we're not trying to really necessarily make this a bright shining jewel sitting in the back. I think it's just to be kind of providing us lighting for safety and security, as and kind of let the building do what it's going to do. So, unless Brian has some other ideas about what he may like to do to it, I think that's the intent. So that same thing with the side entrances. We'll have a light by the door there, and probably again some in wall, just small lighting on the steps. So.
And I just encourage you to look at those, the two stone entrance pieces.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that, you're trying to bring the attention to that, but just, wearing my architect's hat of, sort of the detailing of that for projecting it out. And I appreciate you're trying to highlight the entrances but will you be able to achieve the final detailings to the level that you want with either natural stone or a cast stone based on building on top of the existing brick there? Or is it your intention to remove the brick there and then rebuild and reinstall the new material?
That's part of our next level of detailing in the design, because one of the entrance pieces is going to be brand new construction, right? And the other one is going to be existing. So we may end up actually just demolishing that brick that attaches the two buildings right now in order to put this in and give us a proper backup. That's an ongoing discussion for us to have with the structural engineer and the construction team to figure out the best way to manage that. So I can't answer that question right now, unfortunately. One of them is going to be new. Let's put it that way.
The right one's new, understand that, and just that left one in between, that's in the center of the existing buildings, is really why, I would encourage you to continue to think about that materiality, because I think a brick could be just as effective there to try to unify in the materials. I do appreciate though, since you're going to have multiple bricks, here that the stone element, I don't object to the stone element. I just, the logistical side of trying to build over an existing elevation is just what the larger material, I question what's the appropriate material there. And then how you're applying it to the base of both of the existing buildings. Will you overbuild that on the existing brick, or are you intending to remove the brick there too?
That's the intent right now. It is a 3-course brick wall. We've had those discussions, right? Do we take out the outer course of brick and put the stone in its place? That seems like a lot of work and may lead to some destabilization of the wall. So we have some structural concerns about this. Right now, our current plan is to use the existing masonry. Again, it's 3-course, as you would a CMU backup wall. Do some epoxy anchor attachments and attach the stone directly to it. So it will sit proud a little bit. And then again, the top detail of that, will be rabbited a bit so that we get some, water kind of coming off of it. So it will sit a little bit proud, and I don't think that's inconsistent how, if that was built from scratch, that element would be a little bit thicker than the upper walls anyways.
It looks.
Really, you're muted if you're.
I think we may have lost her. Briefly, Mr. Strickland, I see you with your hand up, so please go ahead.
My hand up. So I want to express to the applicant, I don't want to lose sight of Ms. Anderson's initial comments with regard to consideration of changing those towers to brick. And quite frankly, given the existing nature of the structure and the appearance of the existing buildings that are being combined, I like the fact that they're all brick. And I'm very respectful of the owners, the applicants' representation here of the design that they're trying to achieve. But personally, I would prefer that the whole project be developed with brick and eliminate the stone water table and the tower. So I just wanted to express that. I think some of the other commission members have said that that might be an interesting look as well. So I want the applicant to understand that personally, I would give that strong consideration. Quite frankly, I don't think the brackets are necessary. I think a more simple parapet, more reflective of the current architecture, even though it's not anything architecturally significant, it'd be more representative of what the existing structure is. I think if the applicant wanted to consider this as essentially 3 individual townhouses or row houses, the way those are typically designed and constructed, so that all 3 individual elements were different, I think that would represent a really strong solution, so that you're just creating simply a row house concept. So I just want to put that out there for consideration. Hopefully it's helpful. This whole process is meant to be helpful for the applicant, and I want them to be aware of all the potential solutions that would be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm having some computer issues, so I am on my phone now. So Carl, if you could help me out if there are hands that are up. I cannot see it well on my computer, or I'm sorry, my phone.
We have Mr. Kalikia and then Mr. Edmond.
All right, Mr. Kalikia.
Yes, I just would like to say that I would like also to see an all brick building. I think it would be quite interesting. So I would not be opposed to that. Perhaps using a soldier course, or not a different texture, the same brick, but maybe in a pattern of installation that's more distinctive than the wall itself. But I think an all brick building would be quite interesting there. So I would support that approach, as well as using natural stone versus cast stone for the current design.
Thank you, Mr. Kalikia. Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also like the idea, as I sort of mentioned before, I've been thinking about it since then. I like the idea of a brick on the towers, maybe slightly contrasting or similar with a different bond pattern. I do like the stone base of the building. I also, Mr. Strickland, I like the idea of removing the brackets. I think that would be a little more of a cleaner look, maybe a little more honest. But I want to say that, in my opinion, all of these things we're talking about, these changes to the facade, are like rise to the level of considerations, maybe, as opposed to conditions or requirements. So I think these things are worth investigating. I realize that changing this to brick is a whole other level of design investigation. It may be some construction cost savings at the end of the day, but I realize that does cost time and effort. So to me, all of these questions are really consideration questions, and at least for me, none of them are really deal breakers in terms of approval. But I do want to support the idea of investigating brick for the 2 verticals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons.
Mr. Brancatelli.
Mr. Brancatelli. Yep.
Thank you. A couple of quick technical questions on the site plan. So on it shows that there's a path going down to a proposed stair location going down to Franklin.
Yes.
Okay, and the a big portion of this land is kind of the hillside. What is the site of the hillside? What is the notion back on the hillside of this?
Yeah,
Is there clearing going on? Is there what usable space or?
really not on the slope. So there's, maybe I don't know, maybe 30 feet from the back of the building to the top of the slope.
Okay.
So there's not, and so the site plan, as you can see, how do we get in and out of the garage, right? So it is going to be, it's currently paved right now with asphalt. I think the idea is to do something a little bit nicer back there. So we'll redo the driveway access around to the back of the building, and work and landscape that at the top. So we've had lots of discussion with the Metro Parks, a lot of discussion with Land Studio, to the point where the ownership group has engaged the landscape architect who is doing the Irishtown Bend, so that they can extend everything that's being done on the hillside around through to here. And I would assume then the Metro Parks would do the same thing, so that there's a consistency of the hillside from, the Rapid Transit Bridge all the way over to, the Detroit Superior Bridge. And so that's the intent of what we're doing with the slope. Again, we're working with the same team that is designing right adjacent to us the rest of the Irishtown Bend project.
So that path, that the proposed stair location and path is not on your property line, or is that on?
That is not. That is a Metro Parks in their master plan. They have connecting the path that's at the bottom, along Franklin at the bottom. It'll go in front of Hooples there, connecting that path up to the back of the West Side Market. So they have a plan to, again, bring the path up so that someone from the West Side Market could get down to the path through their back parking lot if they wanted to. That's what they have in their plan now. Again, we've had discussions with them. This location is based on some information that they provided to us of where that was going to be.
Okay, and so the balance of the property, the hillside then right now will stay as is, and that does not, in your discussion with Metro Parks, it does not interfere with any of the Franklin Avenue or trail or path that they're planning on restoration for the hillside.
That is correct.
Okay, and also on that point, then on the back side where the garage bays are, where that's going to be facing this significant hillside restoration project, do we have a color rendering and material rendering of what that backside looks like?
We do not have that at this time. I will tell you, here's what we are planning right now is we want it to be some type of a masonry product. So, we're not gonna, throw up metal siding on the side of this thing. We're investigating some options. As this is a structure, we're trying to be as economical as we can. So we may end up doing a split face or ground face block, something like that. I mean, ideally, yes, we would do a stone. We may end up doing a veneer stone on top of it if that doesn't work, or doesn't get there. But just so that you kind of understand where that's coming from. I can tell you, yes, it would be visible from that path, but it's not visible even from across the river on Marin's Wharf, right? When I had some pictures, I went down kayaking there, took some pictures. You can only see like the top of this building just because of the way that the slope of the hill affects it. So,
yeah, you're correct. I mean, I was just down there for the regatta last weekend.
Yeah,
it is tough to see the view of that, but things change over time. So And that is a significant investment that's going on along that hillside. So this rear facade does somewhat become important if things change and how that is going to be facing. I mean, quite frankly, unless you make the wrong turn coming out of the Market Garden Brewery store, you're rarely ever going to see the front facade either.
No, I agree. And then if you take a look at this particular site plan too, you can see the RTA bridge. That is the general direction of where that bridge goes. So it's more facing the bridge than it is 90 degrees facing Franklin. If that's helps you orient yourself a little bit to how this.
Yeah, I have the
situated on the
maps up to
site.
see. And the other question I would have, and did we get a weigh-in from the council member and from Ohio City?
Yeah, Brian, you want to speak to your conversations with Councilman McCormick?
Sure. I sat down with Councilman McCormick and explained the project overall, and he was very supportive and asked how he could be helpful. So there was no reservations on his side. He just asked how he could be helpful to get this thing done.
And Ohio City
Nate and I have discussed this. We presented to Ohio City Inc. last week, and they've been generally supportive as well. But I mean, if Nate's still on, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but they seem receptive to it.
Yeah, we kind of got into the same conversations or about some of the detailing, right? Which overall positive, right? You heard the comments about the Juliet Balcony that we talked about before. Carriage doors were talked about. So, again, it was kind of more in the detailing of some of the pieces rather than the overall direction of the project.
So what I'm hearing right now is I think the commission is in support of, this project and the general direction that you're going. I think we expressed that the last time you presented. But this is for final. So those final details are required to be understood for the final approval. So I personally feel like we may want to table you so that you can work through these details so that you could bring everything back to us for your final approval. I think the general direction is, we support. I hope you've heard that as a commission, but we do need to finalize, what your materials will be on the back. We do need the landscape, the, lighting, the materials, the exact samples, so that we have them as part of our records of your colors and final materials. There are things that we've asked you to consider, like the brick versus the stone at the entrances and the Juliet balconies and windows on the 3rd and 4th floor. I would agree those are considerations. But for final approval, we do need those final, we do need to focus on those final items like your materials and so forth. So that's just my personal opinion of how we should continue to move this forward. But I would love other feedback from other commission members.
Madam Chair, if I could also add what that rear elevation would look like in a more detailed rendering of color and material, because that may come into play significantly at some point as we continue to see the amazing investments happening along the riverside.
And Madam Chair, if they're going to continue to pursue the either natural stone or cast stone water table, we absolutely need to know how that will be applied to the existing masonry.
Right. So that is, am I correct to assume that EU supports that we recommend tabling this versus voting? Or does the commission feel that this is approvable in the state that it is?
I would
table
it. I'm sorry, reviewable, votable, I shouldn't say approve, well, with the assumption of approve it, but is able to be put forward with a motion.
Go ahead, Mr. Strickland.
I think we should table this if the applicant agrees.
Madam Chair, from a staff standpoint, I think there's a lot still unanswered and would be a little bit outside of my purview to approve administratively. I think this should first go back to the Ohio City Historic Design Review Committee. Because I think they still wanted to look at that and sort out some details there before coming
Yeah,
back
I
here.
understand that you met with my brother. I heard it went well.
Somebody's unmuted. Hang on a second. Okay, got it. So that would be my recommendation. I would agree with it. It's moving forward. I think Paul, you have the answers that this is the right form. It's just the final details, but tabling is the correct to make sure it gets all that final stuff. And I know you knew that you had to get all that final stuff worked out anyway. Thank you.
Does the owner, we need your approval to table you, because I think, like we said, we are in support of this. We just need to finalize those things, and so that we can give you a final vote versus make you come back for, a fourth time to staff and then back to here.
Yeah, let me ask. So again, here's likely to happen. There's not been a consensus of approach to, oh no, you can't use the stone at all. Can you consider brick? We're not a super fan of the Juliet Balcony, but that's just our opinion. Hey, you might want to think about the cornice piece a little bit different. So if we came back to you with this exact same design, right? Said, hey, here's how we're doing the Juliet Balcony. Here's how we're doing the stone. Again, we have a lot of feedback, yes, right? But not enough consensus for us to say we need to change this and this and this to get approval. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I agree. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so again, if we need to table, we would do so. We don't want to necessarily go against the desires of the committee, but I think we want to be able to move this forward with a certainty.
Sure.
Understand what I'm saying? So us saying, hey, we table it, now for us to go back and redesign, go back in front of Ohio City, then come back before you again, is going to put a little bit of a delay in this, because I know the ownership group wants to move forward with this one. So again, if there is anything substantial that needs to change, we need to know that. If it is suggestions or recommendations, my guess to you, other than me coming back with some new railings on the new balcony on the north side, may be substantially the same.
Well, I think we need to understand the detailing too. Is the masonry being removed from that piece, and are you rebuilding it with the cast stone and or the water table? Because we want to make sure this building, which does have good bones, is
okay. Would you approve or disapprove it if we could do one or the other? I know you want to see it, but I'm saying if we said, hey, guess what? We're taking out the first course of brick. We're insetting the stone. Would that be more likely to be approval, or the approach that we think that we're going to be doing is we're going to be attaching to it? So does one or more, either of those mean that we're likely to get approval?
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Giancarlo.
Let's just assume that we are asked to approve it as presented.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would consider the various considerations that have been brought forth. One, obviously, is the elimination of the Juliet Balcony. Seems like we've had 3 or 4 different requests for that. And replacing that, what seems to be a door right now with a window, as Julie suggested. Is that correct?
We're just maintaining the existing window that's there.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The other issue is whether we use natural stone or the cast stone.
Or brick.
Or brick. So yeah, so those really, we're leaving it up to you to consider those 3 factors, or we could make a motion to approve it with conditions.
But it includes your rear elevation. It needs commitment
And,
to
yeah,
you know,
yes,
what
and you-
material that is
Yeah,
and articulation and help us understand it. And you do have an elevation that's included in here, and you know, we would need commitments to those materials too.
right. And Paul, you have to come back in any event for the material.
Yes.
So you really need to come back. So I think maybe tabling would be the best result. I know you need more specific directions, but I think we have given you a considerable direction, and it's now up to you to really deal with that as the architect of record.
This is Brian Spear. When we met in mid-July, we took the comments from this committee and from OCI very seriously, and we worked for the past 2 months to integrate those designs. We have a very different design now. The comments that we received in mid-July, they never included any comments about the Juliet Balcony, and that's why, you know, when we're saying we want something that's actionable, for us to say next time through, we will, you know, we're hoping that it can be efficient and finalized rather than us trying to integrate the changes and then saying, hey, we want to include this as well. We're just trying to understand what is consideration and what is a condition, and for us to be able to take action on it.
Sure. I can articulate what I have written down so that in case we went to a vote, in the we could be clear. The conditions are that you need to submit or present and submit your final materials with the materials articulated and manufacturers and colors, the final landscaping plan with materials, the final lighting plan with fixtures, a final rear elevation with materials articulated and committed to. A color elevation would be a recommendation. The considerations are considering the materiality of the two entrance towers or entrance feature pieces. They determine if they're going to be a natural stone, a cast stone, or a brick. Consideration of the Juliet balconies and removing them. And if that does happen, my recommendation is that the 4th floor has 3 windows to be consistent with the 2nd and 3rd floor. But those are recommendations and considerations. Those aren't deal breakers. And then the last one was changing the detailing or changing the detailing of the north balcony from the modern detailing to match the detailing on the rest of that elevation and your west elevation. Is that clear enough?
Madam Chair, I would add again that the detailing of how the water table would be accomplished if they're going to apply either cast stone or natural stone material has to be detailed.
Thank you for that addition.
Appreciate that, Ms. Trott. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, this is Bob Strickland.
Mhm.
You know, I've been on the commission for 8 years. Never have we considered so many conditions for a project and granted final approval. So I think that list of conditions is so long that it warrants consideration of tabling this project, giving the applicant time to address those. From my standpoint, the lack of details and definition of materiality is my biggest hangup. Whether they want to maintain the Juliet balcony or not, that's the applicant's decision to make. But the lack of details would not allow me to vote to approve this project at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. So with that being said, from the ownership side, do we have approval to table you to allow you to consider to address our considerations and requirements and then come back for your final approval?
Yes, you do.
All right, thank you. And do we have a motion? Would someone like to put forward a motion?
I would move to table.
Thank you.
I
for the
second
motion.
it.
We have a second. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, Mr. Strickland also mentioned the brackets and a reduction at the cornice. Is that a consideration or was that?
I think that's part of the detailing we're
Okay.
requesting.
I know that's just specifically mentioned, so.
Yeah.
Classified as a
That would
consider.
just be a consideration from my standpoint, just to provide some input, hopefully helpful input for the applicant.
All right. Any further discussion?
Quick question to the applicant, if I can, and I'm sorry because I didn't see the initial presentation. Is this for sale or rental?
These are rentals.
And is there any affordable rental, or are these all market rental?
These are all market rental.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. With that being said, then we'll move to a vote. Mr. Brundges, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Brancatelli?
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio?
Yes.
Dryer?
Yes.
Mr. Edmond?
Get a step away.
Okay. Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Trassick?
Yes.
And Ms. Trout?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Like we said, we're very excited about this project. We like the direction you're going, and we look forward to you coming back with the final details so that we can get you your final approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to our final applicant located at 2429 West Superior Viaduct, the Bridgeworks project, revised plan of new construction of mixed use building.
Madam Chair, before we begin,
Yes.
I need to recuse myself from this matter.
Thank you for letting us know. All right, we'd welcome the applicant to unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Morning, everyone. This is Steve Jennings with LDA Architects. We'll just to start things off with, note that we did meet with the Ohio City Historic Design Review Committee last week. As I see Nate Law said he had to drop off this call, and we did receive approval from them. And we'll be coming back to both their committee and Landmarks Committee for the parking garage structure, landscaping, and signage. We are working on this project with Mass Design Group, and they will take the presentation over from here.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. I'm Jonathan Evans here with Mass Design Group. It's great to be presenting to you all again. Again, we've talked about this project a few times now, so I'll try to be brief with the kind of overview. But again, this is the sort of aerial context shot that we see here at the corner of 25th and Detroit. Excited for this significant investment at this kind of key site right at the foot of the Detroit Superior Bridge. Next slide. Again, I think this one we've kind of used in the past to kind of indicate the scale here. I think the idea of creating a singular tower of this scale, again, is something that meets the moment on the site and creates a nice contribution to the city skyline. Next slide. So again, this is the product that we're presenting. I know we've gone through a couple of iterations, but we're very pleased with how the product has been kind of come to be and been consolidated, excuse me, to this singular window wall tower form. Again, we have significant ground level public realm amenities, residential program, a restaurant at the 11th floor with a deck, and then a hotel above that. And there's been previous iterations of this, and I think we're really pleased with the patterning now we have with this window wall system. And we'll talk a little bit more about the details of that in future slides here. Next slide. And again, I think that this one here is kind of showing some of the key datums: overall height at 162, again, the break at the restaurant level at 105 feet. And again, I think what we're really hinting at here is really how this tower meets the ground and plugs into kind of a public realm and landscape amenities that, again, try to stitch together all these different neighborhoods in the area here. Again, one of the other developments that we've discussed in the past too is really pulling the garage off the tower and having it be a separate building, which again helps this building feel a little bit lighter and meet the ground a little more elegantly. The next slide is a similar representation rendered from the other side here. Again, from this side along the viaduct, you see the access to the hotel porte cochere for the drop off to the hotel. And again, when you can see also in that sort of tannish color between the tower and the garage, again, it's part of that public realm amenity program that is directly accessible to the streetcar level of the bridge. Next slide. And again, these next couple images look at the same massing, but starts to actually render the actual materiality that we're considering here. So again, we're excited by the idea of using a kind of window wall system here. The lightness of it is really exciting, and I think we're looking really at how the patterning of the vision glass, spandrel, and the metal panels can kind of work together to create a nice tapestry along the four sides. Next slide. Again, same. This is similar running from the back. And again, I think we'll see the samples of the material towards the end of the deck here, but the Parisian patina color is kind of a kind of copper color that we think works well next to the stone of the original ticket booth building that's remaining on the site. Again, we could probably breeze through the plans quickly, but just in terms of where we are exactly, this site is very unique in that it doesn't really have a back, so we're really being mindful of how people move to and through the site to the public realm amenities throughout the site, and again, trying to acknowledge and create clear access for a backup house, but still not have that be part of the sort of public experience of the site. So again, really generous open space. I know there's been a lot of discussion. We've taken a lot of effort to make sure that we again are inviting from each approach to the site and preserve visual access to the church off of Viaduct, just to our sites north. Next slide. Yeah, we can kind of breeze through these. Again, this is just looking at different modes, vehicular versus pedestrian, things like that, loading, as I mentioned. Next slide. Yeah, so then zooming a little more specifically, and the next slide starts to sort of give a sense of, again, the character that we're trying to create in terms of, again, public activity at this zone between our tower and the garage, and then really providing the connection to the streetcar level. We can, breeze through the next couple of slides here. Again, this really just sets the table and acknowledges how we're really trying to understand and leverage the history of the site and kind of plug into that in a meaningful way. This view here is from our site looking, again, you can see along the right there, that is the bridge as it's kind of coming across the site. In our foreground, be kind of right behind the menu you see there, that is the existing original ticket booth building to be restored. And then immediately in the sort of center of the image is new construction as part of the base of the tower. Again, there we're using a cast stone product just so we can sort of more deliberately and explicitly reference the color coursing of the stone that we're trying to replicate with the ticket booth building. And again, that cast stone building sort of piece there, again, grounds the overall glass tower coming down. What you see there is a sort of public cafe space as part of the hotel programming. And also we're really excited about is being able to walk kind of through the space. So you can kind of imagine going from the corner of 25th and Detroit through the site to the underbridge. Next slide. Again, just a little postcard, again, the idea that that's the thing that we're trying to really celebrate. Next slide. Again, this is the similar location, just sort of standing up from the sidewalk of the bridge. Again, you get the idea of this kind of cast stone element really kind of setting the table for the experience of the building. What you can see at that sort of floral wall mural is that's the entrance to the hotel and kind of public zone just beyond. Next slide. And then from the sort of reverse angle, this would be the approach coming in off of Vermont, the viaduct, again, the hotel porte cochere. Again, that canopy being metal panel product of similar finish and color as the tower above. Next slides. And again, I think we can kind of breeze through these here. Again, just getting a sense of the modularity of the building. Again, residential building moving up to this level where we have the restaurant, with the large deck, and then the hotel above. And again, I think we're really excited to make something that is impactful, that is, dare I say, iconic here. Again, we like the approach here off of the bridge, the sort of sheerness of this facade, subtle carvings to sort of acknowledge some of the key moments of the building, in particular the deck there on the 11th floor. Again, setting up this sort of overarching regulating framework within this window wall system, and then within that frame and the regularity having moments for play with the way the pattern repeats with the way the pattern oscillates with the middle wall panel and division in the spandrel glass. Next slide. Again, so same thing at night. So again,
I think what also is interesting is just how the vision, spandrel, and metal panel, again, will kind of create a subtly different look and presence for the building depending on the time of day. Next slide here again. So then, yeah, this is coming around from 25th Street again. I think we like how we're trying to break up the massing, and then from this approach, the building kind of steps down in some ways, kind of evoking the form of the church. So the idea that this thing, depending on the approach, it has a different sensibility to it. Next slide again. Yeah, so this is then from the opposite corner. Again, really, again, as we push the building back off the side, allowing for kind of a welcoming presence. And again, I think that we have some detailed pictures of materiality coming up here, and again, really, which I think hopefully show the interaction between the Parisian patina metal panel and the stone, and working really well together. Again, another night rendering. Yeah, so there you go. Thanks for speeding me up here. So yeah, aluminum wall panels, Parisian patina, spandrel glass, vision glass, and then the artificial cast stone that is going to be intended to match the ticket booth building. And then the next slide, yeah, just shows those same materials kind of on site next to the ticket booth building. Again, really trying to find a palette that works well together, that is, you know, contemporary of its time, but still lets the historic feature of the site kind of shine through. And I believe next slide, yeah, one more, so you can see the warm gray spandrel panel, the metal panel, and the vision glass next to the stone. I believe that is it.
All right, well, thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with feedback from the local design review committee.
Madam Chair, Nate had to leave, but he left his comments in the chat. Says the Ohio City Historic Design Review Committee recommended approval of the last item on today's agenda for Bridgeworks, with the understanding that the parking garage and any signage would come back to local review. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we will open the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who'd like to start us off? Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I had toured the existing county facility a couple of times, and the prospect of exchanging that county facility for this incredible structure, I think, is a very positive exchange. I've always been thrilled with the design, the considerations of the setback, so that you don't obscure the church. But I think this building is a perfect transition from the high rises downtown on the east side of the bridge, and then coming west into Ohio City. So I'm very much looking forward to this project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Other feedback from the commission members?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur. This is I would say this is going to be an iconic structure. And I think the public access and connectivity should be commended, and their response to the earlier iterations. This is really an amazing project. I'm looking forward to the next to the groundbreaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brancatelli. Other feedback from questions or from commission members? I'll state mine now while we wait for others to comment who may want to. As I've said in the past, you know, I do really admire the design. I think it's a very handsome design and very well articulated. And I do like your final detailing of the materiality. But I personally am not in support of this structure on this site due to the height. But I do appreciate and do like the direction you've taken the design. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate the lightness of the design. I really do like to see that it's a little brighter. It's not the gray that we often see in these presentations. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate some of the choices here. I'm inclined to agree with the chair in that I think it's the overall height is not appropriate for the site. But there are a lot of aspects of the design I do like. That's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Feedback from other commission members? All right, would someone like to put forward a motion? Mrs. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to approve the project as presented with the garage and signage coming back for final approval.
Along with landscaping?
Yes, excuse me, and landscaping. Were there any other conditions from
Those are
the design review?
Those are the three I heard.
Yeah.
And Carl, did we capture them all?
Yeah, I think they had also mentioned that it's going to be 100% salvage from the existing building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I would include landscaping and salvage of existing materials as a condition.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I would second, Madam Chair. Tony.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Brunges, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
No.
Mr. Brancatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia, looks like he left. Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund left. Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick recused himself, and Ms. Trott.
No.
Madam Chair, the motion to approve passes 3-2 with one recusal.
All right, excellent. Well, we look forward to the development of your project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll now move on to administrative reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An email was sent out to everybody regarding the ethics training. I still need to hear from multiple people for scheduling. Please look at that and get back to me today or by tomorrow morning. I did a site visit, call the Lofts on Pearl, that they don't want to do a second expansion across the street. I did the site visit for that one-story building that's there, and it's not in good condition. There's quite a bit of mold, and it really isn't significant. We're working out details. However, I think they are looking at expanding that project even more, and there might be proposed, or they want to propose more demolitions along Garden, which may pose a problem. Things are moving along here in the office. Busy as ever, just trying to keep up with stuff. I don't think I have anything else unless anybody else has something.
Carl, do you want to remind everyone the 2 time slots of the ethics training so that they can confirm with their calendars while they're...
It's on there's 2 dates, the 28th, which is 9 a.m. to 10:30, and then 2 to 3:30, and then on October 12th at those same times.
All right. Okay, excellent. Well, I think the only chair's report or follow-up would be that, Mr. Brancatelli, you did make a very generous offer and to be part of a group to start really looking into what options there are to help with cases like we just reviewed on Drexel, because I do see them coming more often, or we have seen them start to come more often, and it seems like that's going to be a trend that's going to increase here in the future. So I don't know if Carl, think about it and let us know how we can help to start moving that forward. I do think a meeting with the director would be good starts to see, and then talk about how we can move things forward from there. And so if there's others that would like to be part of that, and I think Mr. Strickland, you may have said it, or maybe I'm just putting you on there, please let Carl know, including myself.
You can, go ahead. Yeah, Carl, I'll be happy to join that group once it's organized. Thank you.
And this is Michelle. I'd be happy to participate as well.
All right, and then the last thing is that I think the majority of people on the commission received, and if you didn't, there were a few email glitches to the retirement party for Don tomorrow at 4:30, and that Giancarlo generously is going to open his doors to his gallery for us to celebrate Don tomorrow. And that is all I have. Unless somebody has anything else, then if not, we will adjourn and see everybody in 2 weeks.
Quick question. Do we know when we might have more staff on landmarks?
It's in process, hopefully soon. I'm just not saying anything because I don't want to curse anything.
So I'll say Carl's optimistic by our next meeting, there may be an additional person within the office. Is that correct to say, Carl? Second week of October?
I hope so. I really hope so.
Carl's
Until I see it, I will just stay cautiously optimistic.
So it's moving in the right direction, just not finalized yet, is what I've been told. Okay. All right, everyone. I hope you have a great day. We're going to adjourn today's meeting, and we'll see if we don't see you tomorrow, then we will see everyone in 2 weeks.
Go Browns.
Go Browns.
Go Browns.
Take care.